of the most feared yet fascinating creatures on Earth. Modern-day great whites are awesome, but imagine a super shark the size of a whale, the ultimate terror lurking in the deep. It is not some Hollywood myth. Megalodon was the greatest sea monster that ever lived. Growing to more than 65 feet and weighing 60 tons, it was up to 4 times the size of an average great white. Mighty Meg had a mouth full of razor-sharp teeth, some 7 inches high, the size of a human hand. It is said that Megalodon could devour prey the size of a small car in just one bite. The question is, did this prehistoric killing machine die out along with the dinosaurs, or could its fearsome form still be cruising our oceans today?
Well, I think Megalodon could still be out there. I mean, we know more about distant galaxies than we do about our own ocean.
Very much the T-Rex of the ocean, but like T-Rex, it doesn't seem to be around.
To investigate the mysteries surrounding this giant Jurassic shark, Animal X travels to South Africa and the United States. First stop, Beaufort, South Carolina, to meet Mr. Megalodon. Vito Bertucci is known as the Megalodon Man. He claims to have constructed the world's biggest megalodon jaw with authentic teeth. For decades, this fossil hunter from Beaufort, South Carolina, has combed the world's ocean floors in his search for evidence.
It took about 26 years to get the teeth. And then it took 4 years to actually match them up and build the frame and put them in. It's not something you do overnight.
Bertucci's obsession has at times been a dangerous one.
Right in this same spot, I had a big tiger shark take the end of one of my fins off. And then on another day, I was diving with my friend Bill, and the big tiger shark bit the tank a few times, and then I poked him with my screwdriver, and he took off and swam into Bill and dislocated his shoulder.
Florida author Steve Alton has written 2 fictional thrillers about mighty Megalodon. Alton believes this super predator still has a food source and the perfect hiding place, a warm, deep abyss called the Mariana Trench.
We're talking about a 1,500-mile-long gorge in the Western Pacific. It's never been explored. A man has only been down there twice, and just to touch bottom and come up again, and it's 7 miles deep.
A submarine tracked some really large readings in the trenches off of Puerto Rico. And they assumed it was a large whale, but they followed it for over 7 hours, and there's no whale that could stay down that long. And the submarines can go to depths of over 3,000 feet, and the whale actually got deeper than they could go with a nuclear submarine. And they continued to track it for several hours, even after it went below their maximum depth. And there's no way it could have been a whale, so what was it?
But Dr. John Long, a paleontologist and curator of vertebrate fossils at the Western Australian State Museum, says it's highly unlikely this specialized super shark would have saved itself from extinction by moving into deep sea.
Well, basically, great whites today are topwater sort of predators. They don't live at great depths. So it's a bit ridiculous to think that similar sorts of sharks, ancestors of the great whites, were actually living at great depths, because today only very specialised sharks live at depth, and they're mostly filter feeders. They're not sort of big carnivores.
We know that great whites in the Mediterranean, when seal population thinned out, didn't just disappear. They adapted other food sources such as the tuna and dolphin, creatures that are some of the swiftest creatures in the ocean. If great whites can adapt, why not Megalodon?
Dr. Leonard Compagno is a world-renowned shark expert. He is head of the Shark Research Center at the South African Museum. Dr. Compagno claims if Meg was still around, there would be graphic evidence.
There should be animals that strand or wash up that have huge bites in them from the adults, and there should be interference with fishing operations. There should be interference with divers.
Over the past century, there have been several reported sightings of Megalodon-sized monsters. One of the most famous occurred in 1918. A group of fishermen told an amazing tale of terror, of how they believed a hungry Meg ate the day's catch.
There was an incident off Australia where the crayfishermen were pulling in these huge traps, and this one shark came in and just ate a whole string of traps, and they said it was bigger than their boat, and their boat was 50 feet.
Canadian shark researcher Ben S. Roche has studied so-called Megalodon sightings. He believes they can be easily explained.
One of the descriptions says a square head with some white spots and about 35 feet long or so near the surface, matches very well the description and lifestyles of a whale shark.
I think that it's very dangerous to base scientific theory on conjecture. For instance, just because we haven't seen the sharks doesn't mean that they don't exist. And it's this type of theory that has always led us down the wrong path. For instance, the coelacanth was a species of lobefin fish that was supposed to be extinct 50 million years ago. And yet in 1938, fishermen fished one out of the depths off of South Africa.
Despite their differences, Megalodon believers and non-believers agree that man and shark should learn to share the sea.
Now we're trying to protect great whites and other creatures like them instead of hunting them down and killing them. The sharks have a right to exist, and we now know that the sharks are an integral part of the ocean system, and we really need to preserve them.
And it seems respect for these powerful predators, past and present, is well deserved.
They're one of the first of the jawed fishes to appear on the Earth some 400 million years ago, and they hit on a formula for success that meant they didn't have to change much at all. So sharks of 400 million years ago look very much like sharks of today, and that's a true tribute to their success in evolution.
Perhaps in time we may come to learn whether or not this freak of nature is still swimming in our seas. But until then, the mystery will keep many guessing.
From sharks of enormous size to animals with enormous courage. After the break, Animal X investigates remarkable feats of bravery, death-defying acts performed by normally mild-mannered creatures.
I picked it up that night, and then the following morning it saved my life. It risked its own life to save mine.
Welcome back to Animal X. The psychic ability of certain creatures is well documented. But what of a life-saving kangaroo and even a herd of cattle? Time now to meet some unlikely animal heroes.
Animals are important to us. They're human counterparts. They provide us with companionship and often assist us in making our livelihood. On occasion, their contribution to our lives is far greater.
I picked it up that night, and then the following morning it saved my life.
Daisy and the cows definitely saved my life.
There's no doubt in my mind that animals have well-developed psychic abilities.
Animal X travels to Mottram in Wales and then to Western Australia to meet two men whose lives have been touched by animals in a way they could not have imagined. Donald Mottram has been a farmer all his working life. The bond he had with his herd of cows served him well. When his life was hanging by a thread, his savior came in an unlikely form.
We had a young calf with an injured leg. My intention was to give it an injection of antibiotic. So I started herding the calf towards the corner of the field where there's two gates. Well, I got within about 40 feet of the gate and I felt this horrendous bang in my back. The next thing I know is the bull was actually on top of me. He wasn't goring me, but he was stamping me. Well, he was a young Charolais bull and he was a good 1.5 tons in weight. I can only remember maybe 1 or 2 minutes of the actual attack because He not only stood on my chest and my body, he rolled me over and he'd actually stood on the side of my face where all this was crushed as well. Well, Daisy is what we call a bell cow. I could go out into the field, call Daisy, and because we'd had her for so many years, she would come to my voice and bring the entire herd in. So what I assumed happened that day is when the bull actually hit me, I cried out, and she recognised my cry and brought the herd in to protect me. The cows actually physically circled me in a tight circle. There was about 30 or 40 of them. And they just refused to let the bull come through. 3 of them actually died, stopping them getting through. My chest was injured because I'd had a blow of 1.5 tons immediately above the heart. So my lungs were filling up with fluid. I've got 3 vertebrae in my neck and my back injured. I shouldn't be alive, should I?
Nigel Etherington is a lover of animals. Over the years, he has rescued a menagerie of injured creatures. One was very quick to repay the favor.
I was driving home from Chidley, and on the way home I went around a sharp corner, and then just in front of me there was a lump in the middle of the road. And I stopped, and it was a young wallaby. So I picked up the wallaby, I stuck it in my shirt, and I drove home. I had a few head injuries, so I just sort of wiped its face clean and comforted it, stopped it from stressing. And then I'd settled up for the night.
This act of kindness was about to pay dividends.
The next morning, about 6:30, the kangaroo was knocking at the bedroom door. The kangaroo was like rattling on the doorknob. I think it was like attempting to open the door, and when I woke up I found that the house was on fire and that there was a thick blanket of smoke above me. And I opened the bedroom door to find the wallaby standing there. So the wallaby was in the bathroom, and it was right out of the way of the fire. It actually came across the fire's path, so it risked its own life to save mine. Because the kangaroo was wild, I let it go on the property. Now, it could have taken off or gone wherever it wanted to, but it's chosen to live down the back. I think it's just sort of like a little watcher. She keeps an eye on me, makes sure nothing happens.
How are these animal saviors able to recognize that their human friends are in trouble? Gareth Jennings is an animal behaviorist and respected author.
Well, owners or any people behave quite differently when they're in trouble. And it may well be that completely different type of behaviour will focus an animal's attention. It's quite possible that they do perceive their owner as being threatened and will actually intervene in the situation.
Dr. Rupert Sheldrake has spent the majority of his career studying the psychic abilities of animals. Could this be the answer?
Some animals clearly sense when their owners' lives are in danger. There's no doubt in my mind that animals have well-developed psychic abilities. This telepathic contact, generally speaking, only occurs between animals and people with whom they're strongly bonded. There has to be a strong emotional connection.
Nobody knows how these animal angels are able to save lives. But what is certain is that their owners are not concerned with how they do it. They're just grateful to still be alive.
Just as some animals can save, others can cause massive destruction and panic. After the break, Animal X investigates plagues, from their ancient biblical significance to modern-day occurrences.
We still don't know enough to stop a plague from forming. The plague's going to run its course, and there's not much you can do about it.
Welcome back. Nature has the ability to unleash many frightening scenarios, among them animal plagues that can cause untold death and destruction. So how do they begin, and will we ever be able to stop them?
For centuries, humanity has been invaded by plagues of animals that band together and cause massive destruction. In the Bible, plagues represent divine intervention. a punishment from God. Although few still believe this natural world phenomenon is a form of retribution, science cannot fully explain why they continue to occur.
There must have been millions and millions of locusts. They were just black swarms.
When they're at their fullest, it's impossible to be outside and keep your eyes open or keep your mouth open. I mean, you just can't do it.
Plagues in biblical terms are always bad news. They always represent a punishment.
Animal X travels to outback Australia to investigate the mystery of animal plagues and the devastating effect they can have on our lives. During his 30 years farming the land, Tim Cattle has encountered several locust plagues. The most recent one was the worst.
We came home and found literally swarms of locusts, so thick that we couldn't enter the two back doors of the house. The garden hose, which is green, we couldn't see it was just black. So we wouldn't let the kids come out and see them. They're scary.
Greg Buck is also familiar with the impact plaguing insects can have. Each year, his quiet neighbourhood is invaded by swarms of tiny flying creatures, commonly known as midges.
You would look over on the horizon in the direction of the lake, and you would see these spirals, I would estimate 50 metres in the air, like a tornado. They would head towards our homes, and there'd be millions of them, absolutely millions of them.
Although midges don't bite or destroy the natural environment, their presence is relentless. There is no escape for the afflicted communities.
People can't live in their natural environment. They can't do the things that they want to do. They're prisoners in their own homes. Everybody's inside. They've got the door shut, locked tight. All their blinds and everything drawn. It's just as if everybody's packed up and gone, and you can hear just a constant buzz. We would be waiting for the next morning to come along so we could leave the area. We would stay away as long as possible so we didn't have to come back and be with the midges.
Doctor of Theology, Father Brian Boyle, explains why for centuries people have been terrified by the idea of plagues and their message of divine intervention.
The sun loses much of its light because the sky becomes filled with these little animals. They're described as enormous swarms who cover the whole lands. So it's not just a plague, it's the sense of an overwhelming fear about what we don't understand. And the longer the plague, the more severe it is, the stronger people have the sense that God is to be feared.
Kevin Walden, an entomologist in rural Western Australia, has devoted much of his professional life to researching one of the most destructive plaguing insects there is.
We don't know everything about white locust plague, and I mean, we've studied them intensely for at least 50 years. Well, we're in the middle of a locust plague now, and if they have favourable conditions and the numbers explode to proportions simply unthinkable.
Despite advancements in technology, locusts continue to reach dramatic proportions every few years, causing extensive damage.
Once they start plaguing, it means they've outcompeted all their competitors. We are probably exacerbating the problem by our increasing our intensive agriculture. It's just giving the locusts another food source. We'll never eradicate locusts. That's all we can do is try to minimise the devastation.
Dr. Laurie Twigg is also interested in finding solutions to the problem of animal plagues. His area of expertise is mice.
While we have a lot of information about how mouse plagues function, we still don't know enough to stop a plague from forming. It can cause severe human psychological stress, but generally the plague's going to run its course, and there's not much you can do about it.
Despite our technological advances, we still don't understand why this most terrifying and ancient natural phenomenon continues. Are animal plagues nature's revenge, or a reminder that humanity will always be victim to her mighty force?
People still have a strong, primal, primitive fear about what we don't understand, especially things we can't control.